Hello, Assalamualaikum, and welcome back to another episode of Telaah. And special for this episode, we will be discussing about one particular book that sets out a bold vision for Malaysia and also puts Malaysia in a larger context of the changing the world in transition. And I'm referring to this book in particular, Script for a Better Malaysia, an empowering vision and policy framework for action, authored by none other than our Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. And what makes this particular episode more exciting is that this book draws inspiration from the concept of post-normal times. And this term coined and developed by our distinguished speaker for this particular episode, Professor Ziauddin Sardar. Professor, welcome to the show. Thank you for making your time. And joining us is also a group of international students who involved in essay competition writing. And I think this is a good opportunity for you to get yourself accustomed to Professor Ziauddin, a renowned scholar in post-normal times, future studies and also culture. He has written more than 60 books altogether up until now, perhaps maybe 70.
Something like that.
Yeah, but you have lost count. Yeah. Considered to be a critical polymath among many scholars across the globe, and you must go to ziauddin.com to get a complete overview of his contributions in global discourse. So thank you once again, Professor, for joining us in Telaah. But before we deep dive into the book itself, I think since we have the man himself in the studio, it's only fitting we begin by, we have younger generations here. Make sense of post-normal times and why it matters to Malaysia and also global today.
Well, I think if you just look at what is going on in the world, and how will it impact people like that? You see, for example, the emergence of artificial intelligence, right? All of these guys will be using ChatGPT and DeepSeek and other AI products like that. Perhaps some of them used ChatGPT to write their essays. I don't know. Own up if you did. So, what impact will it have on their minds, right? If you allow a computer program to do your thinking, I mean, if you put a request on ChatGPT, it says thinking. Actually, it's not doing anything of the sort. Thought is a human thing. We think. ChatGPT is processing. What it's doing is gathering data from all over the world, filtering it, and then giving you the end result. It's not doing. You have to do your thinking for yourself. So it will have a major impact on how they think, how they read, what they read, right? So it's very, very important. So that's one thing. Or, for example, the changes in power politics. So how the power is moving from the west to the east. We saw the emergence of BRICS, right? We saw how, for example, the Trump tariffs are affecting the world, and new groups are emerging. So the power is shifting. The power shift will have an impact on their future. Climate change will have a profound impact on their future, right? So the notion of post-normal is what we took as normal doesn't exist anymore. We took it as normal. There be just one global power, America, right? Everything, even in this city. Notice how much impact America has on this city. That normality is disappearing now, right? Now China is becoming another superpower. We took it for granted that we will have environment that will be safe and secure, which they are not anymore given what's happening in terms of climate change. So essentially, things that we took for granted do not function anymore in that sense. So there's a shift from normal to what we are calling post-normal. And the way I theorize it, the post-normal times is an in-between period where the old paradigms are dying, and these include paradigms of disciplines like economics or political science or international relations or even physics, which is one of my backgrounds. And the new paradigms that have not emerged. And the new generation will actually do something to produce these new paradigms. So it concerns them a lot, in a sense. The post-normal, they are living in a very specific period in history that has not existed in the past. So they have both enormous challenges, new responsibilities, but also some wonderful opportunities.
So you mentioned paradigm shift. Should the younger generation or the public at large be worried? What should be the attitude, the right attitude should be in this turbulent times?
The right attitude will be to basically understand and appreciate complexity, because things are complex. Even if you look at, say, governance in Malaysia,
Yeah.
a unity government is a much more complex
Yes.
governance structure than a government dominated by one party. So 20 years ago, you just had UMNO, a very simple structure. One party, orders come in, they filter through. Now you have a unity government, number of different parties pulling in different directions with different goals and desires, with individuals who want to be in different places than they are now. So that means that it's a much more difficult to negotiate.
Yeah.
So you need to understand and appreciate complexity, but within this system there will be lots of contradictions. UMNO pulling one way, PKR pulling another way, right? Some smaller parties have completely other desire. The Sarawak people want to go that way rather than this way, right? So there are lots of contradictions.
Right.
So complexities go with contradictions, and you need to learn how to transcend contradictions, because contradictions cannot be resolved. That's why they are contradictions. They are logically opposite, and all that leads to chaos. So in a sense, be aware that we are living in a very chaotic world. So we have an exhibition going on at Budaya Times Square, the Post-Nobel Times Madani exhibition, and it basically ends by telling people to be post-normal, in the sense, be aware of how the world is changing, that the nature of change is itself changing, and what it means in terms of dealing with complexity and contradiction, ignorance, uncertainty, and things like that. This is why I said the younger generation now have a lot more responsibility.
Yeah.
For example, my generation, we just had to learn knowledge.
Okay.
This new generation also has to appreciate ignorance, given how much ignorance there is, right? So you go on the social media, half the time you don't know whether it's fake news or even if it's real news, it may be reporting something deliberately to misinform you. So there's a lot of ignorance out there. How do you deal with that? That's a new way of understanding, new way of educating that actually we haven't quite discovered yet.
Yeah, still things to learn.
Yeah.
Prof, coming back to this book, we have an acronym, SCRIP. And it represents sustainability, care and compassion, respect, innovation, prosperity, and trust. So this acronym, how does it resonate with these post-normal times?
You see, the really interesting thing about this book, which I think every single young Malaysian should read, largely because it concerns them and their future, right? But also they need to engage with these ideas anyway. The really interesting thing about that book is how it develops a vision of the future, in a sense, and that's very interesting. So the first thing that the book tells you is that to have a future, you need to be sustainable.
All right.
Okay. Sustainability is vital for a future vision and for the future of the world and future of Malaysia. Why? If the world is not sustainable, you are not going to survive. Right? It's almost an existential matter that the world should be sustainable in that sense, right? And climate change, we know, is affecting that profoundly, right? So sustainability is very, very important. It's something that we need to understand, we need to promote, we need to educate ourselves in. It's because it's an existential problem. But it does not just formulate sustainability as a global phenomena or something that Malaysia need to do. It also formulates sustainability between communities and between generations, in the sense. So we need to have sustainable neighborhoods, sustainable architecture, right? Sustainable cities, right? Sustainable families, in that sense, right? And the next
care and compassion.
Immediately care and compassion, right? So sustainability goes with care and compassion, and only through care and compassion you can have sustainability, right? In that sense. So care and compassion for the planet, care and compassion for your neighborhood, for your family, care and compassion for your elders.
Right.
But care and compassion also for our children in that sense, right? So the care and compassion come immediately after sustainability.
Okay.
And then
Respect.
comes respect. Now all of that has to be based on respect in the sense. Again, it's not just care and compassion for nature, but also respect for nature. But the respect the book formulates is respect in terms of mutuality.
Right.
It's not just that you respect me, it's that I respect you
Reciprocate.
too, right?
Yeah.
It's mutual. So the elder generation respects the younger generation, and the younger generation have respect for the elder generation. And there's a respect for community, respect for the environment, respect for cities, respect for education, and so on and so forth. Yeah? And then we have the other elements. Innovation. You need some level of thought and movement within society that comes from innovation, which of course leads to prosperity. So we want a future that is prosperous. There's a future there where everybody can earn a living, there's employment, and so on and so forth. And finally, all of that has to be based on trust, right? Which is the ultimate kind of value in that sense, that we need to trust each other. If we do not trust each other, we cannot build a sustainable society.
Okay.
If we do not trust each other, we are not going to be prosperous. If we cannot trust each other, there is not going to be much care and compassion in that sense. So the way the book formulates its future vision, I think, is fascinating and unique, and it's probably has never been done in that form before, right? And then the framework itself is within the post-normal times arrangement, right? So it's not just about thinking about sustainability, it's also about when you're working within a sustainable framework, what kind of complexity are you going to be faced with? What kind of contradictions will arise, and how are you going to transcend them, right? In that sense. And what happens if there's some sort of chaotic event within, say, the climate change really introduces a very serious torrential rainfall that lasts for months. That's a major chaotic event.
Right.
Are you prepared for that? Does your notion of sustainability contains the idea that if you face a chaotic event, you can do something about it? Right? There's a forethought. There's a future thought involved in the process or not. So the script framework then is put within the post-normal times framework. So one framework helps the other in that sense. So the function of the exercise is both to prepare Malaysia and the future generations of Malaysia for the future.
Okay.
Right? Is to equip them with ideas and notions that will help them understand change, help them adjust to change, and give them concepts and ideas that will help them navigate the post-normality that they are facing. For example, we can see that fascism and far right is on the rise in Europe. We have almost a neo-fascist government in India. Right?
Okay.
We have a president in the United States that promotes, even though he may not be himself a fascist, promotes fascism.
Yeah.
We have mega cooperations with people like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, who openly support fascism, right? They are not hiding their fascism.
No reservation. Yeah.
That will have major impact on the future of young Malaysians. So you need to be aware of what's happening in the world and how the world is changing in that sense. So what I would say is that this is a book that every young person in Malaysia should read.
Okay.
Now, I put my hands up. It's not an easy book to read.
Okay.
Right? Because it contains some very complicated ideas and they're all interconnected and all that. You will struggle with it. But the struggle is very, very important. It's the effort in trying to understand what the book contains that will actually take you forward in that sense.
Yeah. You mentioned yourself, more often than not, a politician, when they author a book, they write a book, normally it's their political campaign or political document. And this is
This is not like a campaign.
Right.
This is not like a campaign. This is not a manifesto in that sense. But it is to some. I mean, it is a policy document as well because it contains lots of policies, right? But essentially, it is trying to both promote a vision of the future of Malaysia and trying to equip all varieties of Malaysian with the right, if you like, intellectual equipment to deal with it.
Okay.
Deal whatever the future throws at you. You have some understanding in that you may be able to navigate the complexities.
Right. Putting in the context of Malaysia, you have the whole range of script. Compassion, sustainability, respect, innovation, trust, and also prosperity. Which one of these are the main challenges faced by Malaysia?
No, this is the wrong way of looking at it.
Okay.
This is the wrong way. Yeah, you see, the world is interconnected. Okay. We almost everything is connected to everything else. That's what we mean by being holistic in that sense, right? So it's not that the Malaysia or some other society lacks one of the major elements of script. It's not that. What you need to understand is that the script is an interconnected thing.
Okay.
Right? As I said, you cannot have sustainability if you do not respect nature. Right? So sustainability and respect go hand in hand. If you have a very disrespectful society, you are not going to create a sustainable society in that sense. So you need to look at the framework in an interconnected way. And from my way of thinking, that is the only way of going forward. The old ways, you see, the conventional so-called scientific method, you have a problem, you isolate it, you study it in the laboratory or you model it or whatever, you come up with a solution and then you put the solution back. That doesn't work anymore.
Okay.
In an interconnected, globalized world, dominated by complexity, chaotic behavior, contradictions and what have you, where change itself is changing, where there's lots of uncertainty, huge amount of ignorance, all variety of ignorance. In fact, only yesterday a major book came out on ignorance. I was looking at as the launch. In a world like that, you cannot isolate problems.
Okay.
Right? You cannot, for example, solve so-called economic problems
by looking only at the economy.
By only looking at the economy and not looking at the society, not looking at what's happening over the horizon in the future, not looking at what's happening in the family, not looking at what's happening in the environment, not looking at the potential nasty weather changes that may be coming in your direction within the next 10 years. You've got to look at all that collectively. Okay. Now, part of the problem is that we are not trained to do so. Even to this day, all these guys sitting here, lovely young men and women, who have no doubt have a great future, are being taught how to isolate problems. They're being taught reduction. Right? In the laboratory, you start with crystals, you go to molecules, you go to atoms, you go to, proton and neutrons, you go to quark. It's reduction. That's the physical side. But in the social sciences, the same sort of reduction takes place. Okay. They're not being taught how to synthesize, how to bring together and create something new. That is what is needed. And to some extent, the script framework does promote the notion of synthesis, although not directly. It doesn't say directly in that sense. I think the Tasir Anwar Ibrahim had a limited notion of how many. He didn't want the book to become too big. Okay. Right? So it had to be containable in that sense. So some of the things I think had to be left out in that sense. Right. So synthesis is the way to forward. Is the way to go forward. Not just reduction. Doesn't mean reduction is totally invalid. Of course, we'll need it, but we need to emphasize synthesis as well. Yeah, synthesis. That's why you mentioned that this book is not an easy read. And right in front of us are youngsters ranging between 16 to 18 years of age. If we were to put this as, how should I say, a curriculum, building blocks, so that they'll be able to understand the complexities, how we incorporate this in our current education system so that they are
more, how should I say, well versed in handling these complexities, chaotic situation within the post-normal times framework?
I think it has to be part of the curriculum, in the sense that you have to start teaching futures or future studies at a very early age, almost. I would say definitely a beginning of secondary school. There's some countries that do that.
Okay.
Finland, for example, when you enter a secondary school, you do have to learn something about the future. In some universities in Thailand, the future studies is basically essential.
Excuse me, Professor, when we are not sure of what the future holds, how do we build the curriculum?
Okay. That's a good question. There is a very reasonably defined discourse called future studies that has existed for at least 60 years, with curricula, with textbooks. In fact, the institute I'm setting up, the International Institute of Future Studies, we've just written 3 textbooks for it. Introduction to Future Studies, Introduction to Islamic Futures, and Introduction to Post-Normal Times Theory, that we'll be using in the master's course, or if you're allowed to teach undergraduate, maybe in the undergraduate, but certainly in the master's courses. But there are lots of teaching material. Teach the Future, for example, is a place you can go and find lots of teaching material for secondary teaching futures. It's not. I would argue the interesting point at the moment is worth mentioning here is that when these guys go to university, they will have the option of studying history, they will have the option of studying archaeology, various social sciences, the natural sciences, chemistry, physics, dentistry, medicine. But one option they will not have is studying the future, which is where they will spend most of their time. They can learn history, but they're not going to spend their time in history. Unless it's just as an intellectual exercise. Physically, they're going to spend all their lives in the future. If they have 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, they may have up to 80 years of future in front of them. That's 4 generations. One generation is about 20 years, right? So they've got 4 generations of future in front of them, yet they do not have option of studying the future in that sense. Right? And I would argue that, in fact, that option should actually begin at the secondary school level, right? The appreciation, why is it important to study the future? Given that it's a subject that doesn't really exist in the sense, because if I say I'll see you tomorrow, when I actually see you tomorrow, that becomes today. So the tomorrow never arrives, as the future is never there. But that doesn't mean we cannot study the future, or there's some sort of data that we can gather about the future in the sense.
You mentioned the word data. I'm going to bring something which is not related directly to the book, because I think the moment when the book is drafted, artificial intelligence, AI, is not really incorporated as an integral part of it. So how, after so many years, 3 to 5 years, things have changed so drastically, AI is not very intrusive. How will that change the dynamics of post-normal times?
Oh, this is one thing that the post-normal time is constantly changing. The basic argument of the theory is not just that things are changing; the change is accelerating, right? The speed, scope, scale of change is totally different from historic change. Change now tends to be global. It now tends to reach the individual. So if I send out a X message, from me, it can reach the individual, thousands and millions of individuals in a globalized world. But also change happens simultaneously. Right. And all that then leads to a complex and contradictory and chaotic world. In that sense. So things will change continuously. So the nature of change itself is changing in that sense. So given that, I think it's about 4 years or 5 years old, that book, although I say it's still very valid. Things have changed so much that in fact AI was not as dominant then as it become now in that sense. And they will change even more rapidly in the next 2 years, in that sense, right?
Right.
It may not just be AI we are talking about. We may be talking about embedded kind of digital cells.
Yeah.
So you need to be aware. You need to be aware of that in that sense. That's why it's become even more important to study the future, and even more important to appreciate what's happening in terms of change.
Given the global nature of the framework itself, be it scrape or even post-normal time, I think by reading this book, it helps you to envisage a broader sense of things happening
Yeah,
around the world.
it
So
does, it
this
does.
is not only palatable to Malaysian.
No,
Right.
it has a. It's, you see that because the important thing about the book is saying that Malaysia is not something that exists in isolation.
Right.
Right. Malaysia exists within a framework of countries, and United Nations, and so on and so forth, and within a planet called Earth.
Yeah.
In that sense, so all of these connections have to be appreciated, and each connection's due in terms of respect, in terms of care, of compassion,
Yeah.
in terms of trust, must be handed to that connection in that sense, right? And that's why it's such a kind of radically innovative book. I mean, in the sense that in radical here, I mean in terms of novel thinking.
Right.
That the thinking that comes out of that book is pretty profound and sophisticated,
Yeah.
and exceptionally future oriented in that sense. Now, this is translated as Madani.
Yeah,
right?
into Madani,
And
right.
Madani is everywhere. I recommend you read the script because the Madani translation dilutes it
Okay.
quite a lot.
You read Madani as well.
If we were conducting this discussion in Malay, it would go very far because my Malay is zero. No, but I have come. Lots of people have come up and say, explain this to me, and I said, this is.
I
Not
tend to
in script.
agree with you.
This is not in script. Where does this come from? And then I look at it, and so we had lots of experience. So I've
Right.
been in some workshop
Okay.
where they were teaching Madani based on the text.
Okay.
And I was pretty kind of saying, no, this is too dilute. Right, in a sense. So the Madani is diluted for the Malay audience. Well, this is the real stuff. I recommend you read the script.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you should ignore Madani, but the script is where you'll get the real essence of the framework in that sense.
Yeah. Professor, you also mentioned nuances of political framework in our discussion since the last 30 minutes or so. And unfortunately in Malaysia, I think our political environment is a bit messy, so to speak. So that will also divert the focus on...
Yeah, this is now, let me tell you, that every single political environment in almost every single country in the world at this moment is very, very messy.
Okay.
Right? This is the essence of post-normal times. Things are not clear-cut as they used to be in that sense, right? Social media, 24-hour news, the shrinking of the globe has actually changed the conversation, right?
Yeah.
In a sense. The kind of contradictions which would not have risen, say, 10, 15 years ago are now right, up front in a sense. We were just talking to someone
Okay.
that immigration in UK was not a problem 10 years ago, but now it's
Yeah.
become a major problem. Yet
Right.
nothing really has changed in terms of immigration because the laws haven't changed. We get immigrants come because there's no legal way. Lots of immigrants come illegal way.
Okay.
Well, we get say a couple of thousand, 10, 15,000 a year
Okay.
in population of 63 million or 65 million. Why is it become an issue? It's because all those opinions which were dormant and were not expressed now are expressed through social media,
Right.
and have become quite big. This is why, in fact, the right is coming back. It's not that the right had ever gone away. I mean, the far right, fascism, has always been there in a European society, American society.
Right.
Right? You just scratch the surface and fascism comes out. But it was dormant. What social media and the environment, the arrival of the digital world has done is to allow it to express itself.
Yeah.
And by expressing itself, it has multiplied itself, right? And this is what happens in chaotic behavior. Things move in geometric fashion, not in a linear fashion. So it's a geometrical multiplication that's made the far right suddenly up front.
Yeah.
So we have a far right president in Italy. We have a big, huge far right movement in France. As lot of Scandinavian countries, moving towards far right. Netherlands has a semi-far right government, right? Belgium, etc., etc. And these are things that we need to be really aware of, because they will affect us directly, and they will affect our children and their children very much.
Yeah. Professor, considering we have a young audience in the studio and also viewers online, so what's your key takeaways to our viewers with regards to script with the B post-normal?
Key takeaway is very simple. Read script and be post-normal.
Be post-normal. So thank you very much for your time, Professor, being here. It's a pleasure to have Professor Ziauddin Sardar. Jangan lupa untuk mengikuti Telaah lagi. Allow me to speak in Malay to my Malay audience as well. Untuk mencadangkan buku-buku di telaah.my dan boleh melihat senarai judul yang kami sudah pun cadangkan di telaah.my supaya anda juga boleh tampil. Bukan hanya sekadar Profesor Ziauddin, tapi ramai lagi yang boleh dibawakan ke pentas Telaah ini. Terima kasih. Jumpa lagi. Assalamualaikum. Salam muhibah.